In this video, I will explain how to use freeform explorations in Google Analytics 4 with several practical examples. Here I am in the official Google Analytics 4 demo property, and to get started with a freeform exploration, you should go to Explore, and then you can select either blank or freeform. Blank will give you just a clean sheet of white paper where you can start building your report, or if you want to have some pre-built report, then select the freeform option right here. Since we are learning this topic, let's start with the freeform. And here we will get the report of the top cities and which device categories are being used in each location. The interface of freeform exploration, or in explorations in general, consists of three parts. The first one is variables, then we have settings, and then we have the output, or the actual report. So in the variables column, you will be managing the items that you're going to use in the report. For example, you can create segments here, you can add a bunch of dimensions, then a bunch of metrics, and then later these will be added to the settings of the freeform exploration. By the way, I release Google Analytics or Google Tag Manager tutorials every week. If you want consistent flow of fresh knowledge and to stay up to date, then subscribe to this channel. It will help us a lot. Then we have the settings column. So here you can select the technique. In this video, we're focusing on the freeform exploration, but also you have other options such as funnel report or path exploration. Each technique has its own set of settings right here. For example, in the freeform exploration, you can select how do you want to visualize this data. Based on my experience, I mainly use the table because this one is more flexible compared to the standard report tables. Then we have donut chart. Sometimes I use a line chart, and that's pretty much it. So my top two choices are table and line chart. Then you can compare the data based on several segments. Let me actually show you how that works. So I will keep the city dimension, and then I will remove the device category so that the report would not be too crowded. And then I can add several segments right here. For example, we already have predefined paid traffic segment. So you can either drag and drop it here, or you can just double click it and it will be added right here. So if I want to look just at the paid traffic, then you can add one segment. If you want to compare multiple traffic sources, for example, paid traffic versus direct traffic, then you can add multiple segments at the same time, and they will have different colors, which means that those colors are also displayed right here. Currently, this report shows one dimension, which is city, but we can add more dimensions right here. For example, I have country, so I can drag and drop it above the city, which means that the first column will be country and the other one will be city. If you add some dimension to the rows section, then they will be displayed right here. So each row will show a combination of multiple dimensions that you have included right here. But you can also add some dimension as a column. And the predefined example that we saw a minute ago was actually using the columns right here. So let me quickly remove the segments. You're not deleting them, you're just removing them from this table while we still have those options right here. And then in the columns, we can again try to include device category. My rule of thumb would be here to use dimensions as columns only if those dimensions don't have many values. If you have a dimension that has hundreds of unique values, then it will not make a lot of sense to have each column for that. Plus you have a limit of how many columns can be displayed in the report. So now I will add the device category. When you double click it, it automatically is added to the rows. So I will drag it and drop it to the columns. And here we have different combinations. By default, explorations show 10 rows, but you can increase that number from 10 to up to 500. So let me do that. Although I'm not sure whether they will have that many combinations, but they do, of course. So in this case, if you want to see the next page, right now when I'm recording this video, there is no convenient pagination somewhere in the corner of the interface. So if you want to see the next page, you will need to edit the start row field, because right now we are starting from the row number 1, but if you want to go to the next page and you show 500 rows, it means that you will need to type 501. And when you do that, now you are in the second page. Then you have the section for values. In other words, this is where you add your metrics. If you want to add some metric, or in fact, if you want to add some dimension, you can also click here and you will get the drop down. Here, you will see only those metrics or those dimensions that are included right here in the variables column. So if you click here and you cannot find a particular dimension that you want to add to this report, first you will need to click plus in that section, for example, dimensions, and then you will need to find that dimension, click a checkbox and confirm. That way you will add that dimension to the variables column, and then you will be able to use that dimension from the variables in the settings. The same applies to metrics. Right now I have 3 metrics. One of them is added. Therefore, if I click here, I only see 2 more options. But now if I want to, let's say, see sessions, I could click here, then select sessions, click here and confirm. And now I can add sessions right here. So I can just quickly drag and drop it or double click it. And now for each dimension group, which is device category desktop, device category mobile, I see both metrics and their values. The table looks quite crowded, so let me remove the device category for now. And this is how many active users do I have and sessions. Also, let me show the first row of the table. Then we have the cell type. This field is responsible for the visualization of each cell. We have 3 options: bar, we also have plain text, which is just a plain table, and then we have heat map. The darker the color, the larger the number. Normally I use either plain text or bar chart. Then you can also filter the data. For example, right now, this report shows data of all users coming to the website. But let's say that I just want to see United States data. That way I could click here, and then again, I see the list of metrics and dimensions that are included in the variables column. And now I will click country, and I'm looking only for that data where the country exactly matches United States, and then apply. Since I'm working just with the United States data, I no longer need the country dimension. I can just keep the city, and these are the top cities where my traffic is coming from. I could also probably add number of transactions to better understand how each city performs. And if you want to sort the table, you can click on the metric, for example here, and it will sort it. If you did some mistake somewhere in your setup, you can click undo and then it will go one step backwards. Then in your property, you will also probably see some icon related to export. I don't have enough permissions in this property, therefore I cannot see it, but in your property, you definitely see that. So you can click that and see different options for the data export. If you want, your exploration might have several tabs. Right now we have 1 tab, but if I want, I can click here and add another freeform, and you can add multiple freeforms right here. You can even rename them. For example, here I could name this, let's say, US cities, and then the other one could have a different name. All right, now that we are familiar with the interface, let's take a look at several examples, because that's the best way to understand how to work with explorations. So I will go to Explore, then I will select blank. And then the first report will be a fairly basic landing page report. So I can name this landing page. And then, as you can see, out of the box, I have no dimensions, no metrics, no segments. Also, the settings right here are empty. For the landing page report, we will need to have 1 dimension, which is a landing page. So click the plus right here and then start typing landing page. And you have 2 options, landing page or landing page plus query string, which means various URL parameters that go after the question mark. For example, here is the URL parameter example, or in other words, query string. Normally, when I'm working with landing pages, I prefer to use the general landing page dimension without URL parameters, because if you have, let's say, a home page and the visitor lands on that page and the URL contains some parameter, and then another visitor lands on the home page with a different URL parameter, you will see 2 rows in your report for the same page, which is host name. But with the regular landing page dimension, both of those visitors will be added to the same landing page. So the report will have 1 row. So after you click this checkbox, click confirm. And then in metrics, we can add, let's say, the number of sessions, how many sessions started on that particular landing page, then the number of users, and maybe the number of transactions, and also purchase revenue. So in metrics, click plus, then let's add sessions. Another metric could be total users, then transactions, and then let's type revenue and select purchase revenue. Click confirm. Now I can just quickly double click on this and then on the rest of the metrics and dimensions. And here is the report that I have. We see a lot of not set landing pages. I have a blog post that explains the reason why this is happening and what could be done to reduce the number of not set. And if you want to learn more about that, I will post a link to it below the video. If you don't want to see a particular value, for example, not set, you could either add a filter right here, or you can do right click right here and then exclude selection. This will quickly add a filter right here and you will save several clicks. So now if I sort by purchase revenue, I will see the top landing pages, and it looks like a lot of visitors already know the website. So they go to the homepage and then they complete a purchase. If we want, we can take this even a bit further. For example, if you're working with SEO and you want to see your top landing pages coming from Google Organic, then you could create a segment, or of course you could create a filter, but I just want to briefly show you the feature of segments. If you want to learn more about segments, I will post a link to additional resources below the video. So now in segments, I can click plus right here, and I already see that they have some segment. If you don't see a segment right here, then you can click create new segment, then select session segment, and then here we can choose a dimension, for example, session source medium, and then it should exactly match Google Organic, because let's imagine that we focus right now on Google Organic traffic. Click apply. Then let's give this segment a name, for example, Google Organic, and click apply. When you create a segment, it is automatically applied to the report right here. And now we can see the number of sessions, users, and so on. And right now, the top page or the top landing page still remains the home page. By the way, did you know that I have a bunch of free ebooks on Google Tag Manager and Google Analytics? So if you want to better learn these topics, then click the link below the video, download those ebooks, and get started. Now let's take a look at another example. This property is tracking data on the official Google Merchandise store, which is right here. And on this page, they have site search. When I search for something, let's say hat, then the URL contains the keyword. Google Analytics can track this automatically, and we could build a report to see the top site search keywords. So let me create a new tab, freeform, and I will call this site search. And in Google Analytics, there is a dimension which is called search term right here in the general section. This will show the keyword coming from an automatically tracked event called view search results. So once you select this dimension, click confirm, and then you can double click it to add it to the report. Here is the dimension now, and we need some metrics. For example, we want to know how many times each keyword was searched. We can find that out by adding a metric called event count. Right now, I don't have event count right here. Therefore, I will click plus, then event count, select right here. We can also maybe select this out of curiosity and then click confirm. Now I can add event count, total users, and then event count per active user. Google Analytics has different metrics for users. One is total users. The other one is active users. If you want to know the difference, then I'll post a link below the video to some additional resource. Even though we see a list of most popular keywords, the first row is empty. And in my opinion, that's a problem. The reason why we have the first row as empty is because right now this report includes the data of all events that happened on a page. Not just site search event, but all events, including page views, scrolling, purchases, all that stuff. But those events don't have the search term value. Therefore, we just have an empty row right here. So what we could do here is we can include only view search results event in this particular report. Therefore, exclude this empty row. This could be done by going to filters, and here we will need to use an event name dimension. But if I click here, I don't see event name. I need to add it in the dimensions section. So click plus, then event name, select it and confirm. Now I can add a filter. So click here, event name, and then we are looking only for those events where event name exactly matches, and then start typing view search results right here, and then click apply. And now we have data only related to this particular event, and we have a list of keywords. If you want to see more rows, then again, you can select more rows right here, for example, 250, and this is the data that we have. And now let's do one more example. Let's build a traffic source report, but since we can add multiple columns right here to the table, we can see at the same time things like session source, session medium, session campaign, session term, and more than 2 columns are not available in the standard reports. So let's create a free-form exploration. Then here I will need to add dimensions. So session source, and then we can select session source medium. That's one dimension that contains kind of 2 values. Then campaign, and then there's also session manual term, or no, maybe not term, maybe content. Session manual add content. We can do that and click confirm. Now I will add source medium, campaign, add content. Then we have sessions, total users, and let's say transactions, add that, and purchase revenue. So we might want to zoom out a bit or maybe hide certain columns right here on the left-hand side. But first, let's say that we want to focus only on email marketing performance. Let's say that this online store runs a newsletter. Maybe they send some other promo emails, and links in those emails are decorated with UTM parameters. If you have no idea what UTM parameters are, then I will post some resources below the video. But in general, UTM parameters allow marketers to add some additional traffic source data to their reports. So now I can create a segment. So click plus right here. And even though they have email, SMS, and push notifications traffic, I want to look only at email. Therefore, I will create a new segment, then session segment, and then session source medium. Maybe contains, or let's see what they have in the exact matches option. Well, they have email, but they have different sources, which kind of makes sense. So contains, and then we have /email. So /email, and click apply. You can preview if some users and sessions will be included, and we definitely have some data. So let's call this email, and then click apply. Now we're looking only at the data where the session source medium contains /email. So as I've said, I will probably need to zoom out a bit to see more columns, then maybe hide the variables column. And this is somewhat more readable. One thing that annoys me right now with explorations is that you cannot resize the columns, and I would definitely like to do that. But since we have one segment and that totals column just basically duplicates the email column, so all I need is right here. And let's see which campaigns drove most revenue. And the best campaign was for October 2025 so far, some holiday sale. And the reason why this is kind of useful compared to the standard reports is that in standard reports, you could just include 2 columns, but in explorations, you can add more, for example, 3. And for the end of this video, I wanted to give you one more advice. I wanted to show you one more feature that is a pretty good time saver. So let's say that you're browsing some standard reports. For example, you go to acquisition and then you look at traffic acquisition. And if you want to quickly rebuild this report, or at least a very similar report in explorations, you can just click right here on this icon, which says open this report as an exploration. And once you do that, Google Analytics will try to do its best to rebuild that report. Some metrics or dimensions might not be available because standard reports and explorations, they use kind of different functionality behind the scenes. But if it is possible, then Google will try to map those metrics and dimensions and will rebuild that report. Not all reports are possible. For example, you cannot rebuild overview reports, but if your report contains a table or a chart, then you're very likely to succeed and have that report rebuilt right here. And if you want to add some tweaks right here, right now, you can do that. If your report contains a chart, then those charts might be included as separate tabs in the report right here. But personally, for me, if I want to rebuild something, that is because I want to see the table. And that's how you can use freeform exploration reports in GA4. But we were just scratching the surface here. If you want to learn much more about Google Analytics and how to benefit from it, then take a look at my complete GA4 course. I will post a link to it below the video. If you found this video useful, hit the like button. That will help me understand what videos do you like and what should I create in the future. Also, if you want to learn more about Google Tag Manager or GA4, then subscribe to this channel. My name is Julius, this is Analytics Mania, and I'll see you in the next video.